r/MaliciousCompliance. He gets exactly what he asked for. This happened when I, 20, at the time, female, was a junior in college. Here's some context. I had taken a long weekend trip to Florida with a friend of mine to visit her brother and go to the Universal Studios Fright Night Halloween event, which was awesome, by the way. We had an amazing trip, and we were on the plane about to head home. This was only my second ever time with air travel. We didn't have much when I was growing up, so vacations were not a regular thing, and the ones we took were low-key. So, there I was, just excited to be flying in my coach seat, waiting to take off. And we kept waiting. It became clear that there was a problem with the plane when the flight attendants started calling various passengers to exit to be placed on different flights so they'd make their necessary connections. Eventually, after around 40 minutes, it was just my friend and I plus around 6 other people. And then it was our turn to leave the plane. We were sort of near the end of the group tromping back out into the waiting area. One couple, probably in their mid-50s, had stormed up ahead of us, and by the time my friend and I emerged from the gate entrance, the rude husband was already berating the pair of attendants, who, to their credit, remained poised and calm. They tried to reassure him, but he was talking over them. "This is unacceptable. You better get me the same seats we had on that flight." He had the first row in coach, the one with no seats in front of it and therefore with extra leg room. By then, the rest of us had gathered around, and the attendants began addressing the whole group, offering reassurances, filling us in that there was a critical problem with the plane, which made me very glad for the change, despite the inconvenience. The rude husband was going off through all of this, and when the attendants left to make arrangements for us all, he and his wife sat there and he continued his commentary to his poor wife, "Unacceptable, how dare they, better have same seats." And so on. Shortly, the attendants returned, and the man practically rushed them. "I demand you make this right." The attendant smiled and said, "You guys are all set." "Sir," and she smiled at him specifically, "I'm very happy to tell you that we have a flight leaving shortly, and we were able to give you and your wife the exact same seats as you had booked on the previous flight." Rude husband, "I should hope so. That's the least you can do." And he huffily returns to his seat. Meanwhile, the rest of us are just waiting. The attendant then turns to us, and she says, "And I'm happy to let everyone else know that you'll all be flying first class with us today." Rude husband was furious and immediately jumped up to demand why they weren't flying first class while the rest of us just sat there in a state of stunned glee. The attendant just informed the man that she'd given him his request, and didn't stick around for more abuse. The wait wasn't long, and soon my friend and I were boarded into the unicorn, fabled place that is first class. As a poor, air travel newbie, it was like some fantasy land, huge seats, real hot washcloths, and though we were underage and couldn't partake of the free cocktail, we did get to choose from a basket of distinctive Pepperidge Farm cookies. And the food. We got a whole meal, which was truly delicious, with real crystal salt and pepper shakers at each place setting and actual metal cutlery. Meanwhile, rude husband is irate. My friend and I were in the last row of first class, which only had around 8 seats, and we could hear him heaping abuse on the coach attendants, going off on how those kids don't deserve first class and how they should have gotten them, they're older, they should be respected, not some kids. Someone else who was in first, not from our original plane, caught on and was quite tickled with the man's ire. Then, the best part of all happened. The flight attendant in our section overheard rude husband's tirade, with language specifically directed at my friend and me. "Who do those kids think they are, as if unworthy of the honor he should have been granted." The attendant shook his head and addressed me and my friend, "I'm sorry about that. Let me take care of this for you." And he closed the curtain to the coach cabin. Rude husband realized what was happening, which makes it even better. I got one last look at his red, irate face before he was gone forever. It was glorious. Don't do that. About 10 years ago I was a supervisor of the food service at a hockey arena. One day at the end of a game my boss and I were standing at a concession that was still being cleaned. This stand also serves as the checkout area where our employees sign out. While waiting for people to leave I took it upon myself to help clean the concession stand. So I take my hand and wipe off some loose dirt, broken popcorn and kernels, and throw it away. There just so happened to be sealed boxes of popcorn right where I was. My boss throws me an attitude and says, "Boss, that is disgusting. I never want to see you do that again." Me, do what? You mean clean? Boss, you know what you did, you just ate the popcorn and resealed the box. Me, I didn't. I was cleaning. I don't even like popcorn, by the way. I just started this year liking popcorn. Boss, well you better not do that again. Me, you mean clean? Okay, I won't. That whole night I refused to clean or participate in any straightening up but did other tasks such as count money and man the checkout. I moved into the kitchen manager position a few months later, so I was no longer under that boss, but he was still part of the team and stayed with the company for a few more years. But every time I was near that old boss and there was popcorn, usually when we had meetings, I made sure to go out of my way to tell him how much I hate popcorn. Sick, but you still want me in? Okay. Someone else's puke story reminded me of this one. Back in the early 2000s I worked at UPS, loading trucks. I'd been there over a year, was well known throughout the building for picking up shifts and being a good worker, and had gained a bit of seniority in the union. Our normal shift was 5 hours, with anything over 25 hours a week being overtime, so I tried to pick up as many extra shifts as I could. Anyone working in a union shop knows a lot runs on union seniority, and picking up extra shifts at UPS was the same way. Most seniority got first pick and it went down the line until the shifts were filled. Early on I made a reputation of working my butt off, so some of the shift soups would delay asking for a fill-in until some of the senior guys left. As could be expected, this upset a couple of people when they got passed over, and I got some face time with the union reps on every shift. Ultimately though, this just led to me becoming friends with the reps and doesn't have any bearing on this story until later. So, as I mentioned, I had a reputation through a lot of the soups of busting my ass, working hard, and always being available. That said, my normal shift soup hated me for some reason. I think it was because he was an old retired military vet, and I was a punk 18-year-old with hair down to my shoulders, piercings, and didn't give a fuck about impressing him in any way except through loading trucks. With us butting heads, I'd brought up a couple of issues with my union rep friends, but nothing was ever serious enough to push the issue. That is, until I got sick. I was in that state where things were coming out of both ends, non-stop. I wasn't getting out of bed for anything, if I could help it, so I called in. UPS policy at the time was as long as you let the soup know something like an hour or more before a shift, it wasn't considered a no-call no-show. I called right at the hour mark, and my soup told me if I didn't come in, I was going to be written up for a no-call. Malicious compliance time. I rolled up to the warehouse looking like death. I'd decided to load up on fluids on the way in preparation for loading trucks after a day of non-stop puking and shitting. We had to go through security and metal detectors before a half-mile walk to the building, then another 1/4 mile or so to my load once inside. Those fluids started coming up just through security, and I also had to stop in the building on the way to my load to avail myself of the commode. At my load, my soup started going over pre-shift crap while I'm standing towards the back next to a trash can. Those that hadn't been near me on the walk-in had already heard about my compliance, so I had a nice ring of free space around me when I started projectile vomiting into the trash can and over the surrounding area. Immediately, my soup shut down the meeting, told everyone to go to work, Then asked me what the fuck I was doing there in that condition. I don't know, Soup, it may have had something to do with you telling me I'd be written up if I didn't come in. I got sent home. Does the story end there? Would I still be typing if it did? The fucker decided to still write me up for a no-call no-show. I WTF'd him when he handed me the write-up, and he said to take it up with the union if I had a problem. Okay, ding ding, round 2 motherfucker. Remember those union rep friends that I'd made from picking up shifts and working my ass off? Yep, I went in search of one and had a chat. He had already heard about my ordeal, a mile worth of warehouse space, and word still traveled faster than it would have if we shared a cubicle. He knew I had been in the warehouse puking, and if I was there, how could I have not shown up? And if my Soup was the one that sent me home after I showed up, how could the write-up be my fault at all? So he roped in HR. HR was involved in all the official write-ups and hadn't heard the story, but was aware of the write-up. So union rep and I told her the story. She called down and asked the Soup to come over to her office. He came and recounted the same story. When asked if I'd called, he said yes. If asked if I'd still showed, he said yes. When asked if he sent me home, he reiterated that he had. When asked how I could be a no-call no-show when I'd called, showed, and been sent home, he didn't have an answer. I was dismissed to go back to work. He was not. Unfortunately, I don't have details on what exactly happened with him. My union rep buddy did say that I wasn't the only one that had been passing along issues for a while, but this was the first they could really do anything about. Being management, Soup wasn't part of the union, and the union rep wouldn't say much else other than it was settled. When a union rep tell you it's settled and they can't say more, my experience has been that they're absolutely right. The Soup kept his distance and didn't speak much to me afterwards outside of what was absolutely necessary. Dr. I puked and my supervisor got reamed by the Teamsters. That was r/malicious compliance. Let me know what you think of these stories in the comments below. Thank you for listening. Please like, subscribe and hit the notification bell. I publish new videos daily.